athletes are now headed. Nick Boyd, what the situation is with him. The College World Series now has wrapped up. We got the game 3, which in essence is the game 7 as far as the College World Series goes, but it didn't necessarily play out on that final day the way I think many of us, at least I had hoped. Next hour, we're going to talk about the Wisconsin Badgers, a number of storylines in and around the school there in Madison. And then at about, we'll say 10:20, 10:25, somewhere in that area, Justin Rowe's going to join us. Justin, one half of the crew from the Blue by 90 podcast, and get into a little bit of poor Michigan. I mean, to think about a school that over the last 3 years,
everything they have to overcome at Michigan,
over the last 3 years that have won national championships in football and basketball and seen their head coaches depart immediately, figuratively, afterwards. It's an interesting time, I think, there in Ann Arbor. So we'll bring Justin on and talk a little bit about that, and then close the show up as we always do, talking and handing out some shovels. So let's get into the Brendan Sorsby thing, because we learned this week that Sorsby would not have the opportunity in the supplemental draft to make himself available for the next level, which is the NFL. The idea, however, immediately spins to what? We're going to have a lawsuit because poor Brendan can't pursue his opportunity. What's funny about it is he'll be available in April. You're available in April for the draft like everyone else. The NFL over the years has not held supplemental drafts every single year. So the idea that they're going to pull it, there's precedent to it, I guess is what I'm saying.
They haven't had a supplemental draft in quite a while.
Quite some time.
Yeah. I think they had one a couple of years ago.
2 years ago?
Yeah,
I thought it was a longer gap. I could be wrong,
but still, the idea of it not having to be an annual thing, much like we get the regular draft, I don't know where
2023 was.
Okay. I don't know legally where this would all stand. But the idea that you want to go after your future employer doesn't seem wise. Like, who in there? Like, okay, Charlie, let's say something happens here at the station.
Yep.
Charlie's upset. Charlie goes out and gets top dog law. All right. The dog is going to bite. And for anybody in southeastern Wisconsin, our apologies to our affiliates if you don't have that particular commercial, because it's spectacular.
Chuck and I learned that they're like all over the country, like 25 states at least.
Okay.
Is covering, dude.
All 25 states send their best for Charlie as he battles 105.7 FM, the flagship station here in Milwaukee, and the Odyssey Network. What do you think is going to happen? Charlie's tenure here at the station will be gone.
A little tainted. Maybe.
And his chance of moving up the ladder is not going to exist.
It's tainted.
That's just the way it happens, right? I mean, you don't go after your future employer. Then what was beautiful is the Canadian Football League was like, yeah, no. Don't yeah, no, right? Good old Canada talk. Yeah, no. Well, you don't need to come here because you're not going to be eligible. So you've got the Canadian Football League and the NFL, in essence, already putting in a 1-year suspension for one Mr. Sorsby, so that when he does enter, we don't have to maybe have that discussion. What will be interesting is the UFL. I think the UFL will leave the door open because they're desperate for eyes on the product. And they'll allow, in my mind, they'll allow him to play. I've seen nothing that would go either way, but I think they'll allow him to play because, in essence, you've got guys now who are trying to put stuff on tape. I think this year, 30 UFL players have found their way now onto rosters going into camp. So it's done, I think, what it's intended for. I think maybe the Four Letter Network and some others have overpaid as far as media rights go, but it's doing what it was intended to do, was what to help put product out there and get those guys into the league. So I think that's where Sorsby may go. I also think it's time for Sorsby to get rid of his lawyer. A very high-powered, high-paid attorney.
Nothing has worked.
who goes
Nothing.
who goes after the NCAA
Mhm.
and the NFL.
Mhm.
If you read in between some of these storylines, he's sued, obviously, and won big cases against the NCAA. He's also worked with the NFLPA and going after the NFL, which Sorsby hopes to be his future employer. In my mind, Dan, I think Sorsby needs to just kind of meld into the background. And here's my other thing. If Texas Tech stood on this high and almighty ground of we're here for the young man, we're going to address his needs and guide him through this difficult journey, why don't you bring him back? Let him run the scout team. Even if he's not running the scout team, just let him be a part of the team. Give him access to all the training facilities, the coaching, the nutrition, everything that you find at a major Division I university. Give him access to it so he can prepare for the draft next April. Somehow Texas Tech been a little quiet for standing on that mountain talking about how we're here for the student athlete. You don't hear much from Texas Tech at this moment.
No, you don't, because suddenly, like you said, Brandon who? Yeah, that was that guy that was here for a little while and ran into some problems, and now
Guy
he's
we
not
gave
here
$4 million
anymore.
to.
And he's not here anymore. But is there any part of that surprises you that suddenly Texas Tech has gone dark on this whole thing?
No,
they're so
absolutely.
glad to have it behind them right now, and they were happy to show him the door. We're not saying you have to leave, but the door's open, kind of a thing, you know.
And your car is
It's
running.
running. It's warmed
We've
up.
warmed
We've
it up.
packed it for you. Yeah. So,
We've hired movers for you. You're all
But it's
set,
your
kid.
decision.
but it's so yeah. There's nothing shocking about it. Again, it was all about, like you said, it was all about the young man, and doing what's right. This is what we do for all of our Texas Tech students, really. So
Right.
I'm just glad. Yeah, show your true colors at Texas Tech. That's what they did.
And Charlie, I know you and Steve were having this discussion a couple of days ago. And I think Steve, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think Sparky was under the impression that this is a no-win situation for the NFL. He feels, I think, as if Sorsby will file a lawsuit and that he will be granted this supplemental draft. The league has the discretion. And in the memo that they wrote, it says the league retains sole discretion to determine whether it is appropriate to conduct a supplemental draft in any given year. Doesn't give rationale.
Mhm.
It just gives the league carte blanche to say either we are or we're not. They chose not to. I don't know what kind of legal precedent he would have to stand on, again, going after what would be hopefully his future employer.
Well, he'd just be throwing money at nothing. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me why he would go out here and try to sue the NFL for something that is their rule and in their court. Like, this doesn't make any sense. And the fact that I'm a little worried, and Sparky's a little worried, that like this may get to a next level, that they do go to court and that the courts do decide, oh yeah, the NFL can't do, like, that's crazy too. This is their league, their rules that they've set at some point here. And I understand that, you don't want to give these leagues so much power, and you don't want these leagues to turn around and say, screw the courts. Like, we don't care what the courts have to say. But I think in some degree, the courts have gotten way too much power in these situations, that these players can just run to them like mom and dad and say, hey, my big brother's beating up on me, do something about it, yell at them over and over again. And the courts just do it every single time. It feels like they're giving them this power. And in the grand scheme of things beyond sports, in the world of checks and balances, that's not how that's supposed to go. And I think somebody needs to turn around and say, no, we're not going to listen to the courts. Like, we need to take a break from this because we're giving them too much power. And what better entity to do that than the NFL, who has so much power?
Which, Dan, I think, hearing what Charlie's saying and agreeing with, but it's the NFL. If there is one entity that exists in our country, especially in sports, but I think we can broaden that as just company-based, however you want to phrase it, has some of the best lawyers in the world representing them at all times.
Mm-hmm.
I think in this case, as sound as Sorsby and his legal team has been, you're running into a brick wall, and at some point it comes to an end. And then I stop and think about, You were given $4 million. How much of that $4 million are you away to this legal team that at some point has failed you because you went to the state court in Texas, got your way, and lo and behold, the Big 12 with a better representation as far as a team goes, went to federal court and just squashed it. At some point, to me, Sorsby's got to be like, I hear you, looking at his lawyer, but I got some money left in the bank and I need to have this sustain me for the next year until the draft comes about.
Yeah, that might be. We don't know what's kind of going through his head and what the strategy is being presented in front of him and how he should proceed. I think as this goes on, it feels like he's getting pushed more into the welcoming arms of the UFL. And that's going to be his option. When you look back at what he was what his legal team was trying to do with the NFL, they were really trying to pull in the NFLPA as a way as you can't retract this draft, the supplemental draft. You can't do it. And it's interesting. The NFLPA silent.
Thank you.
Didn't say a word.
They
wanted no part of it.
They don't have an argument on their side.
Right,
Like the NFL in the rules, like Don said, it has control of the supplemental draft, whether they have it or not. And also, why would you want to represent this person who isn't even a part of the NFL yet, who already has his own problems?
Like we need a bell.
Not worth it.
Charlie, you hit the nail on the head. Unions will go to any length to support and defend their membership. He's not there yet.
Right.
He's not there yet. Now, if something were to occur after he's drafted and signs the dotted line on that contract and immediately becomes a member of the NFLPA then will step in and do what they need to do. But he's not a member. So he has to rely on his own personal counsel to navigate all this, which I would say, outside looking in at this point, hasn't necessarily provided him with the best service, but I guarantee they collected that paycheck. That lawyer and his crew have collected that paycheck. And if I'm Sorsby, and if I'm, you start now to read about what a decent guy he is. He's smart. He's this, he's that. Yes, he had this addiction, which completely understand addictions can pull people sideways once they're afflicted with it. At some point, if he's as intelligent as he says, all he has to do is look at his bank account and see what's going to his law firm on a weekly, monthly, lump sum basis and go, you know what? Let me just take that money that I was paying you and go buy time with a quarterback coach, a nutritionist, a trainer, or whatever, and start really focusing and preparing myself for next year's draft or the UFL, whichever comes first.
Yeah, maybe. But I'm going to go kind of the other side of that coin. I hope he is as nice a guy as people say. You want to hear those stories and that he's recovering and that's what's going on. But just because he's a nice guy doesn't mean he's going to make the best decisions. We've seen this all across. And so we hope he's intelligent enough to look at his bank account, but maybe not. And it would be very ironic to hear about the next legal action taken is coming from the attorney team against Mr. Sorsby for, lack of payment, something along those lines. Like suddenly he's not doing those things. This whole story is so messed up. Okay. That I don't even know what the next step is going to be. And I'll go back to, the NFL and their letter. And the one thing that kills me is like, you haven't taken ownership of this yet.
No.
You still haven't done it.
No,
you haven't stood up and said, look, this is my fault. I'm going to try to get better. We're going to do, we tried different avenues. It didn't work. There hasn't been any statement from him that says this is on me.
Professor.
Not a thing.
PR 101.
Yeah.
Step up.
Own it.
Take ownership and then fade.
It goes away.
Just fade. Be quiet for a little while and then reemerge. Because what do we like in our country? We love people who ascend. And then once they ascend, the media and amongst others love to attack, knock them back down the hill. And then we love to watch them climb back up. Hello, Tiger Woods.
Yeah.
I know Chuck just got done with the golf show, but hello, Tiger Woods, right? Ascends, greatest there ever was, Then all of a sudden the mess happens, gets knocked back down, ascends back up. That I mean, we can go through, that ad nausea, but here's a case where own it, as you said, fade to black, just be quiet, work on your craft. And then once the draft comes, come out again and reassert, I made a mistake. I had a problem. I didn't handle it well. I've done everything necessary for me to be right. And now I'm ready to turn the page and move forward. It's PR 101.
But I also think that from Brendan Sorsby's side of things, and maybe from his PR team, which could be his legal team too, on this side of stuff, is that, when you're starting from nothing, and I think going into the NFL draft, he wasn't getting the same kind of buzz as some of these other quarterbacks, and it wasn't very strong NFL draft when it comes to quarterbacks at the same time. That the other part of PR 101 is any publicity is good publicity. And I think that keeping your name in the cycle of around the NFL by continuing to sue, by continuing to have these legal battles and having your name in the lights instead of coming out like you guys are saying, accepting what happened, what went wrong, going to play for the UFL, I think your stars die a lot faster that way too. And I think within a year, like a year's a long time for a news cycle to go through.
Oh, yeah.
And if your name's not in that news cycle, and let's say he goes to UFL, it is okay in the UFL. He's not amazing. All of a sudden, any kind of buzz that he had going into the supplemental draft that people I think were excited about him there, I think go away then too.
But there's two things to that. One, 99.99% of the time I would agree with what you were saying, except for the fact that he gambled on a sport he played on. I think that's the one that rips that apart. But also, Professor, to Charlie's point, let's say he flutters a little bit in the UFL. There was no given that at Texas Tech, he was going to step in and be the next Joe Montana, Dan Marino, whoever you can think of as a stout college quarterback. We look at Arch Manning last year. Arch Manning got his starts, and we were like, well, now, yeah, he wasn't ready. We watched him kind of develop as the season went, which is another reason why he decided to come back to Texas for one more year to increase his development and grow his stock, maybe come April for the draft. But there's never a given. Think about how many quarterbacks last year that going into the season, people were like, oh, this is a first-round pick, guaranteed first-round pick. And, you do all the hyperbole. And then all of a sudden they get drafted in the 5th, 6th, 7th round because their year didn't pan out. I think you got to put something on film in the UFL if they allow him in order to keep his name out there and hopefully give those in the NFL an opportunity to say yay or nay and what round they're willing to take a chance.
Well, they want to, I think part of the Sorsby situation in terms of his draft stock are his tools, his height, all the intangibles that are out there that you measure a quarterback on. I'll go back to, what we were talking about, that any publicity is good publicity. I don't know that that's necessarily the case with him, because the publicity around him is effectively about his maturity. And as you talk about like a Shedeur Sanders case and stuff like that. So these stories keep circulating, and suddenly, and he's on top of mind. We're a month into this story and we're still talking about him, right? But it's never in a positive light. It never is. And that when you're trying to find an individual that can step in and take arguably the most difficult position in sports, that's going to be the head of your team on a field. You're looking for things beyond height, speed, arm strength. You're looking for those maturity issues. And that's the thing where I think that hurts him, so if you want to go into the UFL, shut up, just play.
Yeah.
If you don't want to go into the UFL, shut up. Okay. Just don't stop talking and stop having your legal team talk, because everything that's going on right now, yeah, you're out there. Everybody knows who he is, but it's not necessarily a good thing right now.
I guess I would just argue that the negative publicity hasn't directly been him though. Like it's always been, oh, he's this kid who has a problem. Texas Tech, what are you doing? NCAA, what are you doing? NFL, what are you doing? It's this whole process, this whole month. It's all been about the other entities that have been letting him do the things he's been doing. And it's always been poor Brendan Sorsby. So, yes, as much as it's been negative and it kind of puts him in a little bit of a negative light, he has more of a redemption arc so far throughout this month of this story than any of these other people, any of these other companies, organizations have right now.
Eventually that turns. The victim case, the victim argument, the victim, however you want to phrase it, eventually turns. And to your point, yep, there are a lot of people that are blaming, and eventually the fingers turn back because he's the common denominator in all of this. So, hey, shout out to Sorsby because he's given us something to talk about each and every week for a month or two, which has been kind of nice. So,
other colleges involved in like point shaving schemes and stuff, and that people barely even talk about.
Right?
No, because we're talking about Sorsby. And so we'll see what this week brings, and we may be talking about our friend next week. Who knows? When we come back after a break, why leave the courtroom? Because that's what we do now in college sports. The NCAA enlisted a 5-year eligibility rule this week, and already by Wednesday, it was taken to court to be challenged. We'll discuss. We'll also talk about the NBA draft, which took place this week, with regards to who the Bucks took and where some other of those athletes that we've been covering for the last couple of years in the college ranks ended up going. We'll do it all next. It's College Sports Weekly. We're live from the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network studios, powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook.
Left Eye, Donnell Jones.
All right, welcome back in College Sports Weekly. We are live from the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network studios, powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook. We have to give a shout out to Paul, who's listening up at Ballard Lake. God bless the Odyssey app.
Yeah,
we can
no
go,
kidding.
We can go everywhere with the Odyssey app. So he's up at Ballard Lake. Thanks for checking in and saying hello. Much appreciate the fact that on this Saturday morning, you've got us as part of your soundtrack and doing whatever. I hope it's fishing. I hope it's just chill
Just
up
a
there at
coffee
Ballard.
on the pier. Yeah, just waking
good
up
time.
slow.
Good
Yeah.
time.
Good
There
time
we
to me,
go.
yeah.
So, speaking of good times, let's go back to the
To the
courtroom
courtroom.
because that's just what we do now in college sports. And so it took less than 24 hours. So let's preface this that the NCAA finally within their regime have come up with and got agreement to enact a 5-year eligibility rule, which is one of those components, part of the federal legislation that we're still waiting to see how that will move forward over in Washington, D.C. But the NCAA came out and took it upon themselves with the approval of, again, of their cabinet to make this what some consider to be a monumental change, which is to give an athlete 5 years. One thing that struck me immediately was that people were like, oh my gosh, no more red shirt. What are we going to do? Well, okay, so if you redshirted an athlete, that still meant they had 5 years of eligibility.
Right.
What is the big deal? Well, the big deal, however, comes with the fact that a lawsuit was filed Wednesday in Cincinnati in Hamilton County. It sought a temporary and permanent injunctive relief that would allow a 5th year of competition for athletes who graduated from high school in 2022. The problem is always going to be this. When you enact a rule, excuse my French, on a Saturday morning, someone's going to get screwed. They just are. You can't help it.
Yeah.
You can't incorporate everybody into the mix. And so now the class of 2022 is upset. And so they've gone forth and had this injunction being sought in Hamilton County in Cincinnati. This, again, another example of, and Charlie's been on the soapbox, and I think rightfully so for the last couple of weeks, Professor, and the fact that every time now the NCAA wants to do something, and we've been critical of the organization, and in many cases rightfully so, but every time they try to make and take corrective measures, somebody's dragging into a state, local court that gets an injunction, that gets relief, and it stagnates this process of reform that every single, hypothetically, coach, AD, conference administrator seemingly wants, but once something is put forth, no one wants to follow.
Yeah. Well, that is college sports today, right? That is when we introduced the idea of NIL and we introduced the concept of portal. And again, this lawsuit that's coming through is basically they are going to be harmed financially if they don't get this additional year to go through. Talk about unintended consequences, and here we are now. I could lose money if I don't have the opportunity to play for this additional year, and that is what we are now. And I keep thinking about the idea of, as important as finding the right AD is, for example, what Wisconsin's going through and what we're going to be talking about later
Next hour,
and doing all that, it's almost as important as how strong is the legal team you have on retainer.
Absolutely.
You know, it's just being able to, okay, well, here's the lawsuit, hand it over, guys, do your thing. And I don't know that you fix this anymore in terms of the ability to run immediately towards a legal team that can help get injunctive relief or anything like I think that's just now how business is going to be done in the NCAA, particularly with, revenue producing sports.
I think, Charlie, the only way it does get fixed, to Dan's point, is we need federal legislation. And I hate the idea of having the federal government have to step in. Can it be challenged? Yes. But I think what we saw with regards to the Big 12 and going the federal route to combat what was done at the state level, I think makes it that much more challenging and not as easy as to what we're seeing with these state level injunctions. I'll say it that way.
Right. And I've talked about this over the past week or so with the new CBA proposals that have been coming out with the MLB and how they just word things. And it just feels like for some reason the MLB and the owners are just really bad at wording whatever they have in order to try and get the MLBPA to buy into whatever they're trying to implement. And I think with this right now, when we talk about federal injunctions in moments like now where it feels like this is very much an NCAA issue and shouldn't be anybody else's issue, but we need somebody else to step in to stop it from continuing to be an ongoing issue for the NCAA. I think you have to look at this and say that federal government has to say that this isn't about stopping these student athletes from doing this and from suing the school, but instead, you're doing this in order to give everybody the same kind of fair shake, because why should these universities have these law teams on retainer like this for their athletes when there's 80% to 85% of the rest of the school that is not going to get this? Again, we talk about this with the Brendan Swearsby case too. Like, Texas Tech is not treating every student the same way that they were willing to treat Brendan Swearsby in this case. And at some point here, the federal government has to look at these universities and say, you know what? We have to think about the well-being of all our students. And right now, this is only caring about the well-being of our student athletes. Problem is, I just don't think that's big enough of an issue in our federal government right now for them to look at that and say, hey, we care about the well-being of all our students. There's other things that they're focused on.
And that's going to be the problem with that bill, is the fact that, as you said, Charlie, there's a lot more on the table right now as far as the federal government goes than whether or not a kid deserves 5 years of eligibility, can only have one transfer, whatever the case may be, as part of that bill. That is going to make it a challenge for it to move forward and to be relevant before we actually get into the football season. All right, let's pivot. Let's talk some sports finally. Let's get out of the courtroom and get into some sports here, as the NBA draft took place this past week. And we saw a number of names that we've talked about during the college basketball season now have the opportunity to go to the next level. Let's start with the Bucks and Braden Burries, who was taken at number 10, the freshman guard out of Arizona. I love the pick. When they took him, I was like, thank you, because I think what we got is a guard that can be a shooting guard or run the point at a given time. Now, I think at the point position, the ball handling skills have to improve a little bit. Okay, he's 19. I'll give him the opportunity to grow a little bit. What I do like is his ability to not only play defense, but his ability to get his teammates involved. And I think that was one thing. I don't want to get into the whole Giannis thing. That I'm Giannis'd out already after 4 days or 5 days, whatever it was since the trade. But the one thing, Giannis became very ball dominant when he was on the floor. He was, running the point, so to speak. I think what we got here is a young man who knows how to distribute by not only getting his shot when he needs it, Dan, but also to get others involved. And he's 19. This is not going to be like many people that were drafted this year. There's only going to be a few people who suddenly next year you're like, wow, they're just gonna pop. Many of these young men, it's gonna take some developmental time in order to reach their full potential. But I think the upside with Braden Burries, after watching him at Arizona this past season, I think it was a sound, solid pick for the Milwaukee Bucks.
It is interesting kind of looking at how draft selections are now evolving a little bit, where again, you're going to have your handful of guys in the first 5-6 rounds that might be able to come in and do something right away. But now you're looking at developing. And that felt like that had gone away for many, many years. When you looked at an NBA draft pick in the first round, that could a guy come in right away and do, and you know what? The NFL does it too. Can that draft pick come in right away and make an impression and influence the team in a positive way? But now it looks like you're drafting with the intention more or less to help develop a little bit more than you've seen in the past. And that's where the Bucks are right now. They have to develop. They don't have a choice. And you've got to pick guys, in this case, like a Braden Burries that can handle that development, can go in, and it's going to be some rough sledding for a little while. It really is. It's going to be next couple of years might be very difficult with the Bucks. You never know, but you need guys that can handle that.
Well, and this transition piece from college to pro now
Mhm.
is much different.
Yeah.
You even though you're paid in college, you're still coddled a little bit, and rightfully so because you're developing. Once you get to the league, you're on your own, so to speak. I granted you got coaches and trainers and everything else, but you got to figure this out. And based upon what I saw last year with him, there's a maturity with this young man that I think he'll be able to do it quickly. And again, you hope that the maturation along with the physical talent will all happen simultaneously and make it a great pick. The other pick for the Bucks at 13, Nate Ament. A lot of people thinking that he would go 10, but once they got the 2 picks after the Giannis trade, went with the guard at 10, took Nate at 13. Charlie, the one thing, and thank you for making me look good on social media. That was
problem.
You're a good man, Charlie Brown. The one thing I don't want to see, however, with Nate Ament, because you already start to see the parallels with Giannis, right? Great on the perimeter, very fluid, can create his own scoring, and go down the list of all the positives. He knows that he's got to hit the buffet. He knows he's got to hit the weight room, and he knows he's got to mature, much like we were talking about Burries. But there are similarities between him and Giannis coming into the league, but don't put that pressure on him. Don't have him be the next Giannis. Have him simply be Nate Ament.
Right. And I think when you look at Giannis compared to Nate Ament, and we've talked about this on Wisconsin Sports Daily with some Bucks writers, Eric Name has brought this up, Jim Mazarski has brought this up. It's really hard to compare anybody to Giannis and the ability or how he was able to put on so much weight and get so strong. Like, he came into the league probably a little malnourished compared to other players. Like, he was underweight, not because of that's just how his build was, but because he just didn't have enough energy. He didn't have enough protein in him. And when they finally changed his diet, he filled out that form.
Yeah.
I think with some of these other young players that are coming in, guys like Nate Ament, they have these builds that I think they are filled out in. And it's kind of hard because when you have that expectation of a Giannis of this guy can become this, he was this skinny little dude that became this monster of a human being. I don't think that's realistic to expect that of a lot of guys, kind of to your point, not to put those kind of expectations on these players. But I also think watching Nate Ament and the film that they've been putting out since he got drafted and all the different reports and all these different people talking about how much they love him and the ceiling that he has, man, I like this pick a lot better at 13 than I thought I would have liked it at number 10. The more I hear about him and the fact that the Bucks were able to kind of play this little game with the Warriors, I didn't really love the Burries pick. It's not that I hated it. It just kind of felt like they drafted him. I was like, all right, that's just going to be a dude that's just going to be on this roster for 5 years. And he's going to be somewhere else in the future. That's fine. I'm cool with that. But then I see the Warriors draft room right after that, and they're yelling at each other because they don't really want Yaxel Lindenberg. I was like, oh, it's because they wanted Burries, didn't they? They wanted somebody who could sit behind Steph Curry for 2 years, and maybe they could turn him into that. You know, I like that type of mind games. I think this is a player that could potentially help this Bucks team moving forward. But the ceiling that I'm hearing Nate Ament has, that's really exciting. But to your point, let's not freak out like he's next Giannis.
Thank you. And the fact that you look at somebody like Kevin Durant, who never filled out like Giannis, but is a pretty doggone good basketball player.
Was able to figure it out too. Yeah.
And so we'll see how it goes. So congratulations to both those guys, and welcome to the city, because it's going to be part of this whole rebuilding process. But I'm looking forward to seeing how these guys develop and what it could mean in a couple of years. All right, let's get to a break. On the other side of the break, we'll touch on some headlines as we make our way to the top of the hour. It's College Sports Weekly, live from the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network studios. We're powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook. All right, welcome back in. It's College Sports Weekly, live from the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network studios. We are powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook. Just a reminder, next hour, Justin Rowe will be joining us. Justin, one half of the Blue by 90 podcast, talk about some of the things happening on the other side of the pond with regards to college athletics, especially with the University of Michigan. So the College World Series wrapped up on Monday. We got our wish. We got game 3. Oklahoma wins game 1, 6-4 over North Carolina. North Carolina bounces back in game 2, winning 6-2. And then it was all Oklahoma in the final, winning 13-2 Monday night and claiming the World Series in college baseball this season. Jackson Willis became the MVP, went 13 for 25 at the plate. Almost softball-like numbers for the young man.
Not bad, yeah.
To me, one of the great stories that came out of it were two brothers that wrapped up their college career. Georgia, first of all, has Colby Branch. He hits a solo home run in the 9th inning, his final at-bat for the University of Georgia, playing in the College World Series. His brother plays for Oklahoma, Kyle. Kyle gets up to bat. The game is out of hand, but it's his last at bat as an Oklahoma Sooner. And here's how it sounded, courtesy of ESPN.
This ball is hit to left. Did he do it? Nunez. He did it just like brother. A 3-run homer to put it away. Are you serious?
I love that part. Are you serious? Did we just witness this? And what were we talking about yesterday, Dad? The funny thing is that you've got two brothers now, right? That will both brag about the fact that their last at bat was a home run. However, Kyle's all of a sudden go, yeah, that's nice.
Yeah.
But have you seen the ring on my finger right now?
Yeah, your home run was cute.
Yeah.
It was special.
It was nice.
But this ring says mine was a little bit different.
Yeah, but his wasn't a blowout. It doesn't
Yeah.
count as much. Like,
that would be the argument
boys.
back, right?
Boys.
You know?
Yeah.
You don't have to be mean to each other.
That's the parents.
It's your casserole.
The parents stepping in at Thanksgiving dinner. Like, everybody relax here. Can we just enjoy a little
Does
turkey?
he always have to wear the ring all the time?
and do we have to have the trophy on the mantle?
Yeah.
Can we just put it away once? But I just thought that was a cool storyline in what was a very, I'll say, highly publicized this year, Dan, World Series. I felt like the World Series this year got more hype than what I remember in the past.
Yep.
And I think, again, there'll be some consultation with the reasoning behind it. Fine. Pat McAfee, West Virginia. It brought eyes. And hopefully those eyes will be ones that return next year and the year after, because I just thought it was a great World Series.
Yeah, and it brings more attention to a championship that is kind of like a weak sibling.
Yeah.
Kind of
right.
compared to football and basketball. It's a great championship to attend. People that go there have a great time.
It's just
highly recommend.
It's funny to me how it's taken a little bit longer to catch on than maybe football and basketball has, but I think we may have turned the corner. And with softball too, the women's tournament was fantastic this year. So I think we're getting to a point now where all of what we can consider to be the major sports are getting their due recognition. All right, hour one about ready to wrap up here. Remember, Justin Rowe joins us next hour from the Blue by 90 podcast. This is College Sports Weekly. We're live from the Potawatomi Sports Radio Book, whatever it is, studios. We're back after all these commercials. Get me out of here, Charlie.
Basketball, football, baseball. From Division I to Division III, it's time for College Sports Weekly with Don Macholis and Dan Underberg on the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network.
All right, welcome back in. Hour number 2 of College Sports Weekly. We're live from the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network studios, powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook. Don't forget, you can chime in at 414-677-1250 or any of our socials at Wisconsin Sports Radio. Want to shout out to our friends up in the Green Bay Appleton area on 99.7 FM and 1440 AM WNFL. In Duluth Superior, it's 710 The Game. Here in Milwaukee, the flagship, 1250 AM, 105.7 FM, The Fan. And in Wausau, 93.9 The Game. Or if you're checking us out on the Odyssey app. Again, coming up later in this hour, Justin Rowe from Blue by 90, University of Michigan podcast. Want to talk about the things that are happening with regards to Michigan athletics, especially with the departure of Dusty May. But before we get to Justin, let's talk about our Wisconsin Badgers. There's a number of storylines that kind of came about during the course of this week. One of the headlines that popped up is the idea that we're now somewhere between 3 and 5 candidates remaining for the athletic director job. It feels like forever since we sat here and argued about, do we go athletic director, president, chancellor, what order do we want to do this? But we're still in the midst of trying to figure out who the next athletic director will be. And Madison has been very quiet about this. But one name that has kind of gotten to the forefront simply because it's released. I'm not saying that this individual is the leading candidate, but it's Desiree Reed-Francois, who is the athletic director at the University of Arizona. Somehow in the midst of things, somebody talked to those who know within the Arizona athletic department's program, and they went, oh yeah, she's a finalist. She's one of like 3 or 5, which then the storylines come from there. Now, we've only been given one name really by attrition to go by, but if she's a finalist, yes, please, because the fact that she went from Missouri to Arizona, potentially to Wisconsin. Here's somebody who understands what's happening in the world of Division I athletics and has maneuvered within her 2 universities previously. I'm assuming now that, Wisconsin would be the third, but her current university, that being the University of Arizona, which athletically, if you do a little bit of a deep dive, they had some financial struggles a couple of years ago. She's righted that ship. She did a nice job at Missouri. Good candidate as far as being one of the 3 to 5 remaining in the eligibility pool.
Yeah, and I'm glad they're looking, at least in this one particular case, they're looking with someone like you're mentioning, someone that has this experience and has kind of worked their way up the ranks a little bit, understands the NIL, understands portal, understands what's going on with the potential act that's coming down. So this is good. I also appreciate that Wisconsin is really vesting its hand a little bit. They're not talking about who they're particularly focusing now in this next 3 to 5. It feels like any other kind of job search. Okay, we're going to go through the resumes. We're going to really kind of peel these down, have some quick conversations with some people, and figure out what our best options are. I'm hoping that it's not 5 candidates. I'm hoping that we're kind of down to 3. Because this has been going on for some time, but again, I'm okay with not knowing until they're ready to kind of leak the news that this person is going to be the next AD. I think that's probably the best way to go about it.
I think they've done a nice job of concealing this and not making it public fodder. Like, you could have in what their mind would be a solid candidate, and as we banter things, Charlie, on our show or other shows, suddenly you're not giving that person, I guess where I'm going with this, a fair opportunity to start from a fresh beginning. because all of a sudden people will have these preconceived notions in their mind that they may have to overcome. There's going to be a preconceived notion no matter what. When you hire somebody, when the word finally gets out, there's going to be talk and people will have preconceived notions. But why drag it out, I guess is where I'm saying. If you're in the midst of this committee, part of the whole HR experience, go ahead, keep it confidential. And then when you're down to, I guess, year 2, that's when you can start having these public discussions about who it is in what direction that you want to take this program with.
Well, I guess it is an important hiring. I guess it is an important hiring. It is huge for this university, especially with the way that college athletics are going. You need somebody who's right for the job in that role. That's in my mind. It just doesn't seem like, I don't know, if this does get out, if you do leak who's getting interviewed, it's not really a question of, oh, they're at another job, because Desiree Reed-Francois is at Arizona right now, technically as their athletic director. Her son plays basketball at Arizona too. I'm learning a lot about her after you brought her up. But I just feel like that, yes, while you don't want those preconceived notions to be put into the air, kind of maybe would dissuade somebody from keeping their name within the group. I think if you have the right candidates and somebody really wants to be there, preconceived notions or not, whether or not there's talk about how this person is going to do, if you feel like that's the right person, they feel like they're ready to be the AD, I don't think it matters that much to me if they release who's getting interviewed. I think that's important for the fan base of the Wisconsin Badgers, who I think are really kind of concerned about this hiring. And they were concerned about it the moment Chris McIntosh decided to leave the University of Wisconsin. It was kind of a scary place to be in a Wild West world of NIL and transfer portal, like we talk about all the time. Letting people know who are those candidates, I think, eases some of that tension that you feel from your fan base, feel from the alumni, by just letting people know what's happening too.
I don't know, Dan, right or wrong. I understand what Charlie just said, and in many instances agree with our friend over there on the other side of the table. But I also think what you have to do before we get to that point is really shrink the number of candidates for whatever the rationale is, to not allow public opinion to seep in. You've put together this committee. Let the committee do its work. When it gets down to, again, 2 or 3 candidates, fine. Let's open it up. Let's have these public discussions, but don't allow the public necessary to influence, because what ends up happening is we think we know, right? You know,
absolutely. Yeah, court of public opinion.
We were talking about in the hallway prior to, when Chuck Arbedian was talking about Phil Mickelson. You know, you have this conceived notion of who we think a Phil Mickelson is until you start reading some of these stories. And you're like, oh, Phil, not the guy I thought you were, there, partner. I think the same thing could happen in the midst of a job search.
Well, yeah. And I guess my only pushback on all this is, you know, with public opinion, you don't know Desiree Reed-Francois. You don't know these names, but every once in a while, social media will put out kind of these ridiculous names like Michael Finley and JJ Watt. People will automatically be drawn to those magnets because you know who they are and you've got positive emotions around these guys, but it doesn't mean they can run a multi-million-dollar athletic department, you know? So I like waiting until, we get those last 3 candidates. I hope we're not going to wait too much longer on that. Once we get into football season, students come back to campus, I think there's going to be more pressure to have those names released and do that. But we're still about 8 weeks from that, so they've got time to do it.
Yeah, I was going to say by August, I think we're going to have a firmer grasp of what's going on there. Another storyline that popped up with our beloved Badgers this week comes via the 4-letter network, that being ESPN, as they ran the Badger season through one of their, I don't know, the Radio Shack Tandy 64 computers to kind of figure out,
using the dot matrix printer to get that to come out.
Yeah, the IBM cards are being fed in as we speak, to kind of go through each college to see what they project the season will look like once it gets to an end. Now, to be bowl eligible, we've got to hit that 6-win mark, is something that we've talked about a few weeks ago. Right now, the 4-letter network projects only a 46.7% chance that the Badgers will hit the 6-win mark. They believe that the Badgers are somewhere around the 3.5 range. So they're taking, I guess, the gambling model. You can go at 3, you might jump up to 4. but at least as the projections go right now, they don't see the Badgers winning 6 games. Agree or disagree, my friend?
Agree. I'm more on the agree side. Oh, look at that disgusted head shake. Here's why. Here's why. I can see Wisconsin being better than the 3. I can see them, surprising us and getting to potentially the 7, maybe even the 8 win mark. Potentially. The problem is that every year, especially during this era, we've been sold on a bill of goods of this is the new quarterback that's going to get there. This is the new wide receiver. This is, it's all about the transfers that are going to come in and suddenly turn the program around. And I've been burned too many times on this one. I'm not buying again. Do I want them to play well? Of course I do, right? I'd much rather talk about a surprising Badger team that's doing really well. But at the same time, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Now we're in year 3 of this. I'm going to go with the Tandy Scantron 3000 and say that it's probably closer to being right.
And
Charlie,
well,
what say you?
And I was just going to say, Charlie, I think what Dan has just said speaks for a lot of Badger fans now. I mean, the skepticism
yeah, and that's what it
over
is.
where this
That's what it
program
is.
has evolved under Luke Fickell, fair or not fair, the perception of where the program is, again, not knowing about all the NIL stuff and things that happen behind the scenes, the perception is one of skepticism. So to piggyback off of what my friend just said, what say you, Charlie?
I think what gives me the most hope that this team, I think, can for sure win 6 games. I think 6 games is my bare minimum for this Badgers team this season. The schedule isn't as daunting as
Correct.
it was last year.
Correct.
And I think the second half of the schedule last year for the Badgers, what they were able to do and the upsets that they were able to have and the amount of juice that you got from that freshman class in the second half of the season last year just showed me that this team was going in the right direction and that this program is going in the right direction, that Luke Fickell has at least these young players that he's recruiting into the building bought into this team. Mason Posa, I think bringing back Eugene Hilton this year, when again, he had a strong couple last games last year. I think those are all important pieces to get out here. The fact that Cart Smith is still on this team, I think he very easily could have said, I'll transfer because I spent half the season as a starter. Yes, it wasn't great, but some other team has to like that and wants me to be a starter. He decided to stay despite the Badgers going back to the transfer portal. And I get the defense of, we need to wait to see what the quarterback can be to some degree. I also think that the way the defense played in the second half of last year, that's a group that if the quarterback can at least just stay healthy and we can have a name and have a consistent name out there, it doesn't have to be a star. He doesn't have to be the Heisman Trophy winner. If he can go out there and just be on the field for every game this season, I think 6 wins is easy for this Badgers team.
Marquee games include obviously the Notre Dame game at Lambeau Field, but they've got Penn State on the road, Michigan State, who I have a feeling under Pat Fitzgerald is going to be a much different team going into this season, but at least that one's at home. They go on the road to UCLA. USC is at home. On the road to Iowa. Rutgers at home. Maryland on the road. Purdue on the road. And then at home with Minnesota. I know the schedule is easier than last year, and I'll go back to what I said when the schedule was announced. Weeks 2 and 3 after that Notre Dame game are going to be critical for the Badgers because, as our friend Jeff Orlowski would say, they're playing the directional school, Sisters of the Blind, whatever, university you want to put after it. And over the last couple of years, with regards to Luke Fickell, this team has beaten those schools by the skin of their teeth. They should be dominating these schools, and they're not. So for me, Notre Dame is one of those games. Yes, I'm rooting wholeheartedly for the Badgers to win. If they don't, that to me is a roll of the dice. Okay, week 1 is in the books. It's week 2 and week 3 against those teams that they should absolutely run off the field. Do they have the ability to do so? If they don't, I just think it's going to be a long year, and I then would agree with you, Dan. I don't see 6 wins.
What do you think if they beat Notre Dame and then lose one of the directional schools of the blind? Like, how do you feel about the start of the season
Then I go back to not thinking they'll win 6 because if you do come out of the blocks and create an upset,
Mhm.
my guess would be you're thinking in week 2 they fall flat, right?
Right.
You're riding as high as high gets. You've beaten Notre Dame, you've beaten a team that many project will go to the playoffs, and then lay an egg against, I don't know, Central Michigan, whatever the case may be. Good schools, don't get me wrong, good football schools, but again, you have the resources and the players in which you should dominate. Then I still have a question. Yes, you're feeling good. You beat Notre Dame. We'll rationalize it like there's no tomorrow. But if you beat Notre Dame and lose to one of the 2 directional schools, then there's, to me, a question about game planning, preparation. There's all of those things that come into play once again. And I think a coach like Luke Fickell, needs a bit of a role. He needs to have that temperature turned down on his bottom with that seat so that it's not necessarily hot by week 4.
I mean, that's a great situation. If they could walk out into game 4 feeling 3-0, then that's a great situation. I'm going to go back to what Charlie said about the defense. 100% agree with you. If the defense can come back and play at the level that gave their offense so many opportunities that realistically the offense really couldn't turn around the way you wanted them to. The defense played as well as they could until they didn't have any juice left in the game. So if Wisconsin can kind of keep that defensive perspective and that defensive heat going, that's fine. But if they can't, if they have those key injuries, and the injuries are going to happen, we know, and how deep that freshman class and how much I'll say improvement they've put in over the offseason. I think those first 3 games, Don, that's just confidence that you feel like you can go into the Big Ten season like you're ready to play. But if they're surrounded in an environment where you go 0-3, 1-2, something like that, where you're just hearing that, man, you're not that good, I think it's going to be a lot harder for them to get to 6 wins.
And that's been the problem the last couple of years, right?
Absolutely.
Is confidence going into the Big Ten schedule because they've struggled in those non-conference games. And again, their non-conference opponents are fair. They're good in their conferences, in those what we call in basketball mid-majors, but they shouldn't have been able to make it as close as it was when you're playing a Big Ten school. One other storyline to get to here before we get to a break, and then our chance to talk with Justin Rowe, and that is one of the commits, Kors Lorkin, a tight end commit, 4-star kid, one of the early commitments for the Badgers, found out this week that Iola Scandinavia, where he goes to high school, middle to northern part of Wisconsin, they don't have enough to have an 11-man football team. They're going to play 8-man football. So now the question is, does he stay for his senior year at the high school that he's grown up with? Does he transfer? If he transfers, that sometimes can be a whole headache with the WIAA. If he stays, what does it mean for his development? To me, it seems like a young man, whether he stays or transfers, will be an early enrollee come January at the University of Wisconsin.
That seems like a viable strategy for that. And I almost think that that's a conversation that's being had between Luke Fickell's staff and the family. Like, okay, how do we want to approach this?
Right.
Because you also don't want him to get hurt into his senior year. You don't, and you don't want the chatter about the WIAA kind of jumping in there as well. There's a part of me not being familiar with Iola Scandinavia. Is that right?
Yeah.
That, it's probably better for him to stay at the program that he's in and just work on him, right? Work on building muscle, do what he can do. And just, and we don't know lifestyle. Is he working on a farm, something like that? I have no idea. So
and I can't sit here and say I know enough about 8-man football to say whether or not it is something that would be a huge detractor going into next season. Would he still be able to have the type of development he would have had playing 11-man football, staying at that high school, Charlie, instead of now having to deal with an 8-man league?
Well, and I think it depends on the position that you're playing. I think for the most part, obviously, offensive lineman, defensive lineman, that's not a good position to be in if you're going to have an 8-man football team. You said he's a tight end.
Yes.
So I think this is a spot where if he's willing to kind of take on more of a wide receiver role, that could be important. If he could like learn how to long snap. Like there's a couple of things that I think he could work on within 8-man football that could help keep him within the eye of the Wisconsin Badgers. At the same time, it's still not a spot that I think you really want to be in, especially when the Badgers have done such a good job of recruiting within the state of Wisconsin, which says that there's a lot of talent within the state of Wisconsin. If you are going into your senior season and the Badgers start to see some other players playing 11-man football, and it's a tight end who's balling out in the Milwaukee area, that's going to stand out a lot more than you balling out in Iola, Scandinavia in an 8-man team. I can understand why he would feel the need, the want to go to a school where you have that 11-man opportunity. At the same time, like you said, there's a lot of hurdles to go through when you are doing that. And that's something that is this late into the summer even is going to be hard to get through.
I feel for the kid. It's got to be a
It's a
tough
hard
predicament
position.
to be in going into your senior year of high school.
Not his fault.
Which should be one of the better years that you have in your K through 12 experience. All right, let's get to a break, because on the other side of the break, Justin Rose is going to join us, co-host of the Blue by 90 podcast. Want to talk to Justin about Dusty May leaving this week, what that means for the University of Michigan's athletic program, and some of the things that have been happening in and around the University of Michigan. We'll talk to Justin on the other side of the break. It's College Sports Weekly. We're live from the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network studios, powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook.
Yeah, that's on my beats. With the Bentleys, the Hummers, the Benz. Escalade to the 23 trends. Jumping out the Jaguar with the Timbs. Keep your bread up.
All right, welcome back in. It's College Sports Weekly. We're live from the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network studios. We are powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook. Don't forget, you can chime in on the Nicolay Law Talk and text line 414-677-1250 or at Wisconsin Sports Radio. We're going to jump to the Nicolay Law Talk and text line and bring in our guest, Justin Rowe from the Blue by 90 podcast. Justin, good morning. Good to see you again.
Good morning. Good to see you. How's everything going?
Everything is well, and I appreciate you taking some time. I know things are a little bit busy on the other side of the pond, as we like. We definitely appreciate you taking a few moments, Justin. I listened to the podcast the other day, the emergency podcast, when you learned that Dusty May was leaving. A bit of a kick to the solar plexus, to say the least.
Yeah, that is for sure. No, we're joking here. It feels like this is twice in about 3 years that we win a national championship and then immediately get kicked in the gut and lose our head coach. And so I guess we're getting used to it now at this point. But it didn't make it any easier to then watch him. As exciting as the draft was, watching our guys get drafted. You see him in the Mavs logo, and you're like, wait a minute, you were in Ann Arbor like 48 hours ago. What's going on here?
Go ahead.
What did you hear any chatter since the announcement? Did you hear any chatter before the announcement in terms of why he made the decision he did to leave Michigan?
Before, no, honestly. And from everybody I know here, even on the inside, nobody was expecting it. I mean, there was always the chance just because of, the success, obviously. But you had gotten through kind of most of those openings, about a month ago or whatever. And so we kind of thought we were through that. And then it came out of nowhere. But now, now that the dust has settled at least a little bit here, it definitely became apparent that the collegiate landscape, NIL, just all of that. And then obviously a significant pay raise and the opportunity to coach a 20-year-old Cooper Flagg. Like it sounded like he, was like, I just can't turn down this opportunity, which totally understandable, right?
Absolutely. And Justin, okay, so this will be hindsight, and we know that's 2020, but I can distinctly remember driving home on the Tuesday after the national championship from Indianapolis and listening to Coach May, in various interviews and what have you. And to piggyback off of what you just said, it's the fact that, he said, I got done. We cut down the nets. I had, I'll hypothetically say, a glass of champagne with my family and the boosters, but then I was ushered out because immediately we were on a Zoom at midnight because the whole transfer portal had started.
Yep.
You don't even get an opportunity really to celebrate because you immediately have to pivot and start recruiting for what will be this upcoming season.
Yeah, and I can tell you right now, he literally has not had a day off since that Monday in Indianapolis. We've been involved in some of the donor events here, and so he's either been at a donor golf outing, donor dinner, a recruit Zoom or recruit visit, or on site, in Ann Arbor with his guys that are, Trey McKinney's coming back, right? And so he's also got to try to develop his guys in the offseason to go, national championship, right? And so I think, I think it's fair to anybody to be like, oh my gosh, I am just like worn down. And, as much as I know he loved his experience at Michigan, I think he's like, man, I don't know how long I can do this, and it's just a tough situation there.
What do you think now is Michigan's next steps moving forward? How do they begin to initiate the process to replace Dusty May?
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly it was a shock factor to everybody. He was, I know, at a donor golf outing literally that weekend prior to announcing this, and so I think that the athletic department and Warren Manuel are now assessing everything. I think they smartly appointed Mike Boynton, the assistant coach, as the interim to, keep a little continuity with these guys. But what I am assuming is going to happen is they're going to, the guys are on campus now, so they're actually practicing. They're going to go through practice with Mike Boynton as they kind of assess, all right, do we have a staff here that we could, make this happen can we make this happen for the 2026-2027 season, or do we, start a nationwide search, which is actually way after the coaching cycle happened. So I think they're probably sitting there like, all right, what's our short list of, who can we get in reality right now?
All right, Justin. So we're talking with Justin Rowe, the Blue by 90 co-host. They do such a great job of covering Michigan athletics. And Justin, as soon as Dusty May decided to leave for the Dallas Mavericks, of course, you've got all the tinfoil hats that come out on social media and the conspiracy theories that are out there. And I know Michigan athletics is in the midst of an internal investigation trying to, make sure moving forward things are the way they're supposed to be. I'll just leave it at that. And immediately you see on social media, well, he was given a preview of what the report is, and he knows what's coming down the pike. So that's the reason why he decided immediately to go to the NBA as late in the game as it is, as you described. So either throw fuel on the fire or debunk it immediately. However you want to take it, Justin, the floor is yours.
I'm going to go ahead and debunk it. I did see a few, I'm going to emphasize fake tweets out there of putting that out there, but I can say, no, that was not any of the reason, and he hasn't seen anything. I definitely think that, there's the internal investigation is more on the football side and the athletic department as a whole, and it's all stemming from what happened in football in the past year. Whereas, for basketball, really, there's no investigation into anything that they're from this past season. I do find it kind of funny when people bring up tampering and on and on and on. And you guys probably are aware, like, if you know anything about the current landscape of college athletics, you find me somebody that's not tampering and I'll call them a liar. And that's just the way it's going right now. It's, and to be honest, the definition of tampering changes just about every week also. So that's the other part too.
The damn tinfoil hats at least gives us something to talk about. Go ahead, Dave.
Justin, do you have a wish list of someone that you'd like to see at least brought in for an interview? A couple people that you think would be a good fit?
Yeah, I do really like Mike Boynton. I think that, it's somebody, a lot of people are comparing it to the Sherrone Moore situation where you ushered him in right after he was the OC, just because it's another assistant. I do like Mike Boynton. He has head coaching experience, right? And so I think that changes things a little bit because he's run a program, and he ran a program at Oklahoma State, which I'm just going to go ahead and say it. It's not a very strong brand at this point in the Big 12. It's not Michigan, right? And so I think that is that's the difference there in that situation. The other one that I would really like to take a look at is Josh Schertz from St. Louis. Billikens, I believe it is down there. He is very close with Dusty May. They run a very similar system. He's brought St. Louis up to a point where they are having a great, it's a really good program now. Michigan actually beat them in this tournament, but, they gave them a good run. I believe they won their conference this past year. So that'd be one person that I would definitely take a look at.
Justin, what's the temperature like as far as being a fan of the University of Michigan right now? You bring in Kyle Willingham to coach the football team. It seemed like things had kind of leveled out a little bit. And then obviously with the news this week with Dusty May leaving, it feels like an EKG just kind of going up and down consistently there on the other side of the pond. How's the fan base dealing with all of this?
Yeah, it is like it's a roller coaster, right? We've been up and down and up and down, and it's been pretty insane because I don't know that there's been another university or just team in general that's been at such a high of highs and then a low of lows multiple times within a couple year span. I'll say this right now: I'm at our partner Feldman Chevrolet of Highland here in Michigan. We've got Bryce Underwood, Savion Hyder, Rod Moore, JJ Buchanan, Blake Frazier. We've got 5 football players out here. And there were people lined up at 5 a.m. for an 11 a.m. event.
Wow.
So I'll say that people aren't shying away. There's still a rabid fan base here. It's not like there's an exodus of fans that are like, I can't do this anymore. So,
I can't.
We're not quite there yet. I think maybe, one more scandal or something, right? That would get us to that point.
One more well, hopefully not for you.
Thank you. I appreciate that for my heart, for my own health.
But it gives you something to talk about at least.
That's
right?
true. I tell you what, we haven't had a slow news week in about 28 months here. So.
Well, in your case, you're talking positive teams, and we're talking about the Big Ten on our end. We're happy with Wisconsin's doing in the basketball side regular season. We get tripped up, obviously, when we get the NCAA tournament. With the football side, I'll kind of segue over to that. We're obviously Wisconsin has had its troubles. Segment earlier, we were talking about kind of ESPN putting out electronic predictions for end of year records. How do you think Michigan's going to end up doing this year in the Big Ten? What is your prediction for them?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting schedule. First of all, I will say the schedule for Michigan is not easy this year. And I'm going to be careful what I say as I'm sitting about 5 feet from the starting quarterback here. No, I think that they have a challenge ahead of them for sure with a brand new coaching staff. I do think that the coaching staff has brought a lot of structure and much needed structure to the program. But you're looking at, you got to go to Oregon, you're at Ohio State, you play Indiana and host them, after coming off of the national title, you got to go to Oklahoma, host Oklahoma at home. And so, those are 4 games right there. Like, I think a lot of people with a brand new head coach and coming off of the year they had last year that are like, those are 4 losses right away. And I'm not going to say that, but I think those are 4 tough games, let alone the rest of the schedule. And so I think that you'll see, this is going to be a really tough team. They're going to run the ball still a lot. And I expect Bryce to take a pretty big step as well. They brought in a QB coach for him. So I'm excited to see some real big leap for a few of these guys that came in last year.
Justin, got time for one more, and so we're gonna step back, take a little bit of a broader perspective, because over the last couple of weeks, we've spent so much time talking about college athletics and the court system, and what's been taking place. If there was one thing right now, Justin, in your mind, if we could just do this, then the other things we'll tackle. But for you, what's the most important thing that you feel needs to be addressed first before we start tackling the numerous issues that face college athletics today?
Yeah, it's funny. I would say the average fan probably would just say NIL in general has gotten out of control, right? The reality is, I've been in a lot of those negotiations with the agents and everything like that. The reality is the transfer portal basically being open all the time is the real issue, because, it technically closes and reopens, but these agents are shopping their guys around the entire year. And so that's been the issue is if they could put some actual parameters and some consequences to an agent speaking to who at XYZ team mid-season, I have heard, literally I can't count how many times I've heard of an agent mid-season shopping their player around while that player is playing for their current school, right? And so that to me is the issue, because then, when you're think about in the NFL, they only renegotiate those contracts every 4 years or 5, once the contract's up or when they're in their contract year, right? Right now, it is literally every 6 months that they are needing to renegotiate. And so the number just keeps climbing and climbing and climbing. And I'll give you an example for us. Dusty May leaves. Well, guess what? Every agent just came back to Michigan and said, all right, sorry, I need some more money. Otherwise, we're going to go shop around again. They just did that and got these guys signed and committed. Now, there was a guy that's asking for multiple millions of dollars more just to stay. And so you're constantly having to recruit your own players, and keep them. And that to me is really the biggest issue.
Justin, appreciate the time. I hope this will be a reoccurring pit stop for you on a Saturday to keep the conversation going, especially once we start Big Ten football, Big Ten basketball, and so forth. Good luck with the event today. And again, thanks for carving out some time. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate it. You might catch me in this fall. Maybe a few beverages in on a Saturday at the tailgate or something, but then I'll give some real hot takes.
That's fine. As long as you've got it, we'll join you because, we don't want to see you have to do it alone. So we'll work and see how that plays out. All right, Justin, take care. Have a great rest of your weekend. That's Justin Rowe joining us on the Nicolay Law Talk and Text Line, co-host of the Blue by 90 podcast. Dan, I think what you got to love, I think we knew going in, is that nothing really phases a Michigan fan.
Not really, because at some point it's going to get corrected.
Yeah.
Right. It's at some point they're going to win a championship in something. And it's just, yeah. That's why it's Michigan, but yeah, I enjoyed his insight. I agreed with what he had to say in terms of the portal.
Yeah.
And, when you have an insider like him and say, no, he had no idea that Dusty May was considering a switch, but he gave a really good account as to why someone would want to leave.
Absolutely.
You win a national championship, you can't enjoy it. I mean, you have no days off. Forget it.
Coaches want to coach.
Yeah,
that's
right.
Why they do what they do. All this other stuff is a part of the job, but I think unfortunately at the college level, it's overtaking the coaching part of it, and I think that's why some of these guys are deciding to exit stage left. With the exit stage left. See what I did there? That's pretty good. That's good radio right there, Charlie. Mark that tape. All right, we'll take a break. On the other side of the break, we'll hand out some shovels while I step gently off my soapbox, patting myself on the back. It's College Sports Weekly, live from the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network studios. We are powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook.
know what? I won't shovel the funk. I won't shovel the funk. I won't shovel the funk. I feel like shovel the funk. I got shovel the funk. You wanna shovel the funk? Do you wanna shovel the funk? Then go ahead. Go.
One last time on a Saturday. It's College Sports Weekly, live from Wisconsin Sports Radio Network studios, powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook. Time for us to hand out some shovels. So, Professor, I start with you today, my friend. You're up.
Yeah, I'm going to take this one, make it a little bit personal. Gentlemen, 67 years. That's how long today Mother and Father Underberg have been married, and we'll be celebrating with them later on this afternoon. But if you see them, wish them a happy anniversary. 67 years.
Bless them.
Wow.
That's a long time.
That's
Let's
a long
go.
time.
That's two shovels. We
That's
get
two
one for
shovels
mom and
and
dad
one for
right
mom
there.
and dad. I'll make sure we get those to them right away.
Put a little bow on it.
Yeah.
From the College Sports Weekly show. Just for
All
us.
day.
Yeah. All right, Charlie, go ahead. Sir.
My shovel's going to go to Dusty May. I think this is the right decision for him. Everything that everybody else has been saying about how just college sports is just a hard place to be in, and especially like we just learned from Justin, the fact that you just are so busy, like I think that's a really hard decision to make, and the fact that he decided to make it, I also think will put a little pressure on the NCAA to try to keep some of these coaches around. With all these ones retiring, all the ones going to pro leagues, you need to start finding ways to get these guys so that you can develop the players that you're paying so much money to stick around. And I think Dusty May and this whole news story is going to help kind of push them towards that as other changes get made.
You know what's funny? What you don't hear coming out of Michigan or anywhere else for that matter, it's just not a Michigan thing. When a coach used to leave, remember how people would stand on the soapbox and go, he recruited those guys. He was going to stay with them. He was going to guide them. He promised the parents all of this stuff. And now, since the transfer portal is what it is today, it's been really quiet. We get an opinion like Charlie's, which I agree with, where you just have to go someplace maybe where it's a little more stable, where you don't have to worry consistently as to whether or not the team you recruit is going to leave anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? What's fair is fair, right? It's if the players can do it, they finally got the freedom to do that. So now, yeah, it's a little easier for those coaches to make those decisions.
All right, as we close up shop, I'm going to give my shovel to the Canadian Football League, who jumped on the NFL bandwagon and told Mr. Sorsby, you got to wait another year. With that said, our thanks to Justin Rowe, co-host of the Blue by 90 podcast, for our producer, Charlie Usen, my friend on the other side of the table, the Professor Dan Underberg. I'm Don Wachillis. Thank you, as always, for joining us. We won't be back in 6 and 22. I'll say happy 4th weekend, everybody.
Everyone.
Now we'll see you in 2 weeks. Have yourself a great rest of your weekend.